But one of the issues that we immediately confront as we start talking about these feasts and so forth, we discover by looking at the Bible carefully that almost everything we've been taught about the Easter week, as we might call it, is wrong. The church has for centuries assumed that the crucifixion took place on Friday. And there are many good scholars that still will defend that view. But is it Friday or Wednesday? Let's explore that a little bit. We know from John 12 that Jesus traveled from Jericho to Bethany 6 days before Passover. Well, that would require more than a Sabbath day's journey if Passover is on a Friday. I'll show you that in a minute on a chart. Jesus also specified there would be 3 days and 3 nights. Those are his words between the crucifixion and resurrection. You can't get 3 days and 3 nights between Friday and Sunday. But there are 3 issues here. The other one is there are 2 Sabbaths between Passover and Sunday morning. I'll show you that too. So all 3 of these things put together suggest strongly that Jesus could not have been crucified on a Friday. That's the point of all this. And in Matthew 28, verse 1, your English Bible says, when the Sabbath was passed. That's a mistranslation. If you look at the root text that many Bibles will be footnoted in, is the word of Sabbaton, which means it's a plural noun, that there are 2 Sabbaths, at least there's a plurality of Sabbaths between Passover and that Sunday morning. But so the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is one of the 7 high Sabbaths each year, intervene between Passover and Shabbat. So let's take a look at this. This is a little sketch, if I may, of the 14th, the Passover, which is the pivotal feast, the first one we're going to tackle here, is nailed to the calendar as being on the 14th of Nisan on the Jewish calendar. Now, if that's the case, then we know. Let's take a look at the presumption that the 14th was a Friday. Well, then John 12, verse 1 says, Then Jesus 6 days before Passover came to Bethany. He's in Jericho, getting to Bethany. And 6 days, that's about a 20-mile walk, by the way. But he's 6 days before Passover. Well, if that's true, 6 days before Passover, if Passover is on a Friday, then that would turn out that he did that journey on the 8th of Nisan, which would have been, on this reckoning, a Shabbat. 6 days before Friday is a Shabbat. Now, could a Orthodox Jew go more than a Sabbath day's journey on Shabbat? No. So all that tells you is that particular year, that particular time, the 14th could not have been a Friday. Okay? It just doesn't work. You with me? Okay. So the 8th of Nisan, that year, could not have been a Shabbat. Something else we have, looking at this from another point of view, in Luke 19, we have recorded the triumphal entry. Jesus arranges this ride on a donkey, from Bethany up over the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. Very pivotal event in history because 5 centuries earlier, the angel Gabriel had told Daniel the very day that he was to do all that. So there's a big issue here that we'll try to skirt around right now for this review. In Luke 19, you'll find the triumphal entry mentioned. Now, turns out he did that on the 10th of Nisan. That was the same day that the Passover lambs are presented to the priests for inspection. The day that on the 10th of Nisan is when the Passover lambs that are going to be offered on the 14th are inspected to make sure they are without blemish. Well, it turns out that if we're correct, that would be on that the Passover actually took place on a Wednesday, that 10 days earlier would have been the 10th of Nisan, and that's when the Passover lambs are offered inspection, and that's when our Passover was presenting himself for inspection, riding that donkey, exactly the way Zechariah predicted in Zechariah chapter 9, riding into Jerusalem. But I do want to cover this 3 days and 3 nights issue. If Passover is on the 14th, Jesus himself said that he would be in the grave 3 days and 3 nights. Well, if he is executed on Passover between the evenings, Passover starts at sunset. Before sunset, the following day, from our point of view, is still the 14th of Nisan. If he's in the grave 3 days and 3 nights, that means the resurrection would occur at sundown Saturday night. We also know that the women came to the tomb after the end of the Sabbaths. That's in Matthew 28, verse 1. What the Sabbath is plural. The day after Passover starts the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is one of the 3 obligatory feasts that every able-bodied Jew had to attend. After the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we have Sabbath. See, Passover could be any day of the week, depending on what year it was, because it would shift because of the shift of the calendars. But whatever it is, there's a Passover. There is a Sabbath after Passover. The next morning is the Feast of First Fruits. It's defined that way. So on this particular time, the 14th of Nisan is on a Wednesday. That made the morning after Shabbat, after Passover. It's always on a Sunday morning. But that Sunday morning would be 3 days and 3 nights from the Wednesday. Follow me? It all fits. It wouldn't fit any year. It fits this year. And so we have here in view Passover itself, another major feast, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and which is a Shabbaton. In addition to the 52 Sabbaths each year, they have 7 high Sabbaths, and Feast of Unleavened Bread is one of those. The Feast of First Fruits, the first of the harvest celebration. That Sunday morning, when the smoke at the temple was going up from the formal Feast of First Fruits, there were a group of women heading for an empty tomb.